Cities built against nature. Venice, Italy. This is not a story about cities. It is a story about defiance. Throughout history, humans have built settlements beside rivers, near fertile land, and in places where survival came naturally. But some cities ignore that logic completely. Cities built on water. Cities built below sea level. Cities built in deserts. Cities built on frozen ground. Cities that seem to challenge nature itself. And yet they exist. Not as small villages, not as temporary settlements, but as thriving centers of civilization. These are the cities that should not exist, and the extraordinary stories of how humanity built them anyway. Our journey begins in a city that appears to float. A city born from necessity. A city that has spent more than 1,000 years fighting gravity, tides, and time itself. Venice. From above, Venice looks impossible. Hundreds of islands connected by bridges. Grand palaces rising directly from the water. Narrow canals replacing streets. Boats replacing cars. At first glance, it feels less like a city and more like a dream. But beneath its beauty lies one of the greatest engineering achievements in human history. When early settlers arrived in the Venetian lagoon more than 1,500 years ago, they were not searching for luxury. They were searching for safety. Invading armies swept across mainland Europe. The marshy lagoon offered protection. The water made large-scale attacks difficult. The islands provided refuge. But there was one problem. People were never meant to build a city here. The ground was unstable. The islands were small. The tides were unpredictable. Nature offered security, but not permanence. To create Venice, builders drove millions of wooden piles deep into the muddy lagoon floor. Tree trunks were hammered into layers of clay beneath the water. Above them, stone foundations were constructed. Entire districts rose where nature never intended a city to stand. Against all odds, it worked. The wood remained preserved beneath the oxygen-poor water. The foundations endured, the city grew. Trade transformed Venice into one of the wealthiest powers in Europe. Ships arrived from across the Mediterranean. Merchants brought silk, spices, gold, and knowledge. For centuries, Venice became a bridge between worlds. A city built not because geography was favorable, but because people adapted geography to their needs. Yet the battle never ended. Water remains Venice's greatest challenge. High tides flood streets. Storm surges threaten buildings. Rising sea levels place increasing pressure on the city. Every year, engineers continue fighting the forces that have challenged Venice since its beginning. The struggle between city and nature continues. And perhaps that is what makes Venice so remarkable. It is not a city that defeated water. It is a city that learned how to live with it. The canals are reminders. The tides are reminders. The entire city is a reminder. Nature never surrendered. Venice simply adapted. For over a millennium. Yet, if Venice represents humanity's struggle against water, our next destination represents something even more ambitious. An entire nation built below sea level. A country that survives only because its people refuse to let the ocean reclaim the land. The Netherlands. A place where millions of people live beneath the level of the sea itself. And where every day is an ongoing negotiation with nature. Netherlands plus Dubai. If Venice represents a city that learned to live with water, the Netherlands represents something even more extraordinary. A nation that refused to surrender to it. Looking at a map of the Netherlands reveals a remarkable reality. Much of the country sits at or below sea level. In some regions, the land lies several meters beneath the surrounding ocean. By all logic, large portions of this country should be underwater. and for centuries they were. The North Sea has always been both a blessing and a threat. It provided trade, it provided food, it connected the Dutch to the world, but it also brought storms, flooding, and destruction. Throughout history, entire communities disappeared beneath the sea. Villages were swallowed, farmland vanished, lives were lost. Many societies would have retreated. The Dutch chose a different path. They fought back, not with armies, with engineering. Over generations, they built dikes, canals, pumps, and barriers. They drained lakes. They reclaimed land from the sea. They transformed water into territory. The result is one of the greatest engineering achievements in human history. Entire cities now stand on land that once belonged to the ocean. Airports operate below sea level. Millions of people live and work in areas that nature never intended to remain dry. Yet every Dutch child grows up understanding a simple truth. The battle is never over. Water is always waiting. Storm barriers remain on constant alert. Massive flood control systems protect cities around the clock. Engineers monitor sea levels continuously because the ocean never stopped trying to return. The Netherlands did not conquer water. It simply became extraordinarily skilled at negotiating with it. And that negotiation continues every day. The Dutch often say that God created the earth, but the Netherlands was created by the Dutch. It is a statement of pride, but also a reminder. Without constant effort, much of the country would disappear. Nature has not changed its mind. Humanity simply keeps adapting faster. From a nation built below the sea, we travel to a city built against another extreme, the desert. For most of human history, deserts limited civilization. Water was scarce, temperatures were brutal, agriculture was difficult. Large cities rarely flourished for long. Then came Dubai, a city that appears to have emerged from imagination. Just decades ago, this coastline was a modest trading settlement surrounded by sand. Today, it is home to some of the tallest buildings, largest developments, and most ambitious engineering projects on Earth. From above, Dubai looks almost futuristic. Glass towers rise from the desert floor. Artificial islands extend into the Persian Gulf. Highways stretch across landscapes once dominated by dunes. At first glance, it appears that humanity finally defeated geography. But the reality is more complex. The desert never disappeared. It remains just beyond the skyline. Heat still dominates summer. Temperatures frequently exceed 40 degrees Celsius. Water remains scarce. Sandstorms still arrive. Nature remains present, only hidden beneath infrastructure. Every tree, fountain, and green space requires careful management. Water must be produced through desalination. Energy consumption remains enormous. The city functions because of continuous technological adaptation. Dubai represents a different approach to survival, where Venice adapted to water, where the Dutch adapted to the sea. Dubai adapted through engineering and technology. It transformed environmental limitations into opportunities. The desert became part of its identity, not something to escape, but something to build around. Standing beneath the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building on Earth, it is easy to see human ambition. But the true story is not height, it is adaptation. Because even here, in one of the most modern cities ever built, humanity remains engaged in the same ancient struggle. How do we live where nature never intended us to thrive? The answer changes. The question never does. And nowhere is that question being answered more creatively than in our next destination. A nation that has literally expanded its territory by creating new land. Singapore. A city-state that refused to accept the limits of geography. Singapore plus Longyearbyen. Singapore is one of the smallest nations on Earth, and yet it found a remarkable solution to that problem. It grew, not through conquest, not through expansion, but by creating land itself. Since gaining independence, Singapore has increased its physical size through extensive land reclamation. Coastlines have been reshaped. Entire districts have been built where the sea once existed. The nation literally expanded its geography. Few places demonstrate humanity's ability to redesign landscapes so clearly. But Singapore's story is not simply about engineering. It is about survival. With limited land, few natural resources, and a rapidly growing population, the country faced difficult choices. Instead of accepting those limitations, it adapted. Today, Singapore stands as one of the most densely developed and technologically advanced urban environments in the world. Gardens rise beside skyscrapers. Nature and architecture blend together. Water systems are carefully managed. Green infrastructure is integrated directly into urban planning. Every square meter matters, because space itself is one of the nation's most valuable resources. Singapore teaches a powerful lesson. Sometimes adaptation means changing the environment, but doing so carefully, strategically, with long-term planning. It is not a battle against nature, it is a partnership with it. Yet our final destination represents a very different challenge. Not water, not heat, not limited land, but frozen ground itself. Far above the Arctic Circle lies Longyearbyen, one of the northernmost settlements on Earth. Here, the challenge is not building on water, it is building on permanently frozen Earth. The ground beneath Longyearbyen remains frozen year-round. This permafrost creates unique problems. Buildings cannot be constructed using traditional foundations. Pipes behave differently. Roads require constant maintenance. Even burial practices have changed because the frozen soil prevents normal decomposition. Everything must adapt. Winter brings months of darkness. The sun disappears completely. Temperatures plunge. Snow and ice dominate the landscape. Polar bears roam the surrounding wilderness. Nature remains firmly in control. Yet life continues. Families raise children. Businesses operate. Schools remain open. The settlement survives because people learned how to live within the Arctic rather than against it. Buildings stand on elevated supports. Infrastructure is designed specifically for frozen conditions. Residents prepare carefully for seasonal extremes. Adaptation becomes part of daily life. Longyearbyen reminds us that technology alone is never enough. Knowledge matters. Experience matters. Respect for the environment matters. Because in places like this, nature always holds the advantage. The Arctic does not negotiate. The permafrost does not compromise. People simply learn how to coexist with both. And in doing so, they become part of the landscape itself. From tropical coastlines to Arctic darkness. From reclaimed land to frozen ground. The same pattern continues. Human beings find a way, again and again. But perhaps the most important lesson lies beyond any individual city. Because these places are not really stories about engineering. They are stories about imagination, finale, cities built against nature. What makes a city possible? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Water, resources, fertile land, mild climates, the ingredients that have supported civilization for thousands of years. Yet every city we've explored challenges that assumption. Venice rose from a lagoon. The Netherlands emerged from the sea. Dubai flourished in the desert. Singapore created new land. Longyearbyen survived the Arctic. By conventional standards, none of these places should exist. And yet they do, because the history of civilization is not the history of perfect geography. It is the history of adaptation. Human beings rarely wait for ideal conditions. Instead, we adjust, we innovate, we imagine solutions. Again and again, the same pattern appears. Nature presents a challenge. Humanity responds, not always successfully, not always permanently, but persistently. The cities we admire today are not monuments to victory over nature. They are monuments to negotiation with it. Venice still floods. The Netherlands still monitors the sea. Dubai still depends on water and energy. Singapore still manages every meter of land. Longyearbyen still answers to the Arctic. The struggle never ended. The adaptation simply evolved. And perhaps that is the deeper story. Civilization is not a finished achievement. It is an ongoing process, a conversation between humanity and the environments we inhabit. Some conversations are gentle, others are relentless, but all of them shape who we become. Because every city reflects its landscape. Every skyline tells a story. Every street reveals a solution to a problem geography once imposed. The most remarkable cities are not the ones that ignored nature. They are the ones that learned how to work with it. And that may be humanity's greatest talent. Not strength, not technology, not even intelligence, but imagination. The ability to stand before a flooded lagoon and see a city. To stand before the ocean and see opportunity. To stand before a desert and imagine skyscrapers. To stand before frozen wilderness and build a community. The ability to look at impossibility and ask, what if we built here? And somehow, finding a way. These cities should not exist, yet they do. Not because nature allowed them, but because humanity refused to stop imagining. This is Atlas Tab, and this is Earth Unfiltered.